have you read Marilyn Adams' view of the atonement? She, in her book Christ and Horrors, she talked about how God does. She takes a different approach to God who counts as the superior. But for her, the atonement, what that suggests is that the atonement is what atones for God's choice to create the world, because of the fact that God chose to create a world that was finite and He's infinite. She talked about how there's this ontological distinction between God and us, such that it is inevitable that there be evil in the world and suffering. And so for her, that then implies that God has to then come down and share in that suffering in order to justify His own act of being the creator. So in a way, it's like the superior is answerable, but it's not because we are liable, but because He's in a way liable.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
The reason that I undertook this philosophical study of the atonement is because for years I have been very dissatisfied with the work of Christian philosophers on this subject. And I think what you just explained exemplifies the reason for that. However congenial such a theory of the atonement may be, that's simply not what the word atonement means biblically. The word for atonement in English, the word atonement, translates the Hebrew word kippur and the Greek term hilasketai. And these have the meaning to purge or to cleanse. And the object of atonement is sin or impurity. So the biblical doctrine of atonement is the doctrine of how sin and impurity are cleansed and done away with so as to reconcile us to God. And it seems that Christian philosophers who have not undertaken a serious exegetical study of the doctrine of the atonement concoct these theories of the atonement which just do not connect with the biblical data. Now, I didn't say very much at all to justify penal substitution, but I would double down on what I did briefly say, namely that a serious exegesis of Isaiah 53, and then especially its employment in the New Testament, I think shows that Jesus of Nazareth himself thought of himself as the suffering servant of Isaiah 53, who would die for the sins of the people, and that the New Testament writers also thought that in his dying, this was a sacrificial offering to cleanse and purge of sin. So I do think that penal substitution has to be at least a facet of any biblically adequate atonement theory.